land of eternal darkness, fearsome and unknown, long hidden by theory and guess, your mystery now has flown. I'd like to see that land beyond the pole. That area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown. Rear Admiral Richard Ebert, February 1947. The United States Navy's Polar Exploratory Force was preparing to embark upon one of the most memorable adventures in world history. Under the command of Rear Admiral Richard Evelyn Byrd, U.S.N., it was to penetrate into the land extending beyond the North Pole supposed end of the Earth. And it was sensationally to culminate more than 400 years of vague conjecture concerning the Earth's northern extent. As the hour approached for air journey into the land beyond, Admiral Byrd transmitted from the Arctic base a radio announcement of his purpose, but the announcement was so astonishing that its import was lost to millions who avidly read it in press headlines throughout the world. That announcement of February 1947 conveyed in no uncertain terms immediate fulfillment of man's cherished hope to penetrate into land area of the universe about us. It promised appeasement of man's hunger for knowledge of a route into the luminous celestial mansions. And it promised that knowledge at once, not 100 or 1,000 years in the future. Like every great truth, the simple truth of that 1947 announcement was not to be discerned. The announcement's lack of ambiguity in describing the celestial route rendered it, like the descriptive message of 20 years before, a truth stranger than fiction. And in a world of theories fiction, who can be expected to credit this truth, which is compelled to make its debut in garments stranger than those which attired the acceptable fiction of theory? The words of message were momentous. I'd like to see that land beyond the pole. There was nothing complex in that expressive statement of fact, yet despite its simplicity, the statement had to be misunderstood by the many who, unlike the Admiral from Boston, feared the unknown. The simple announcement provided such impact on popular misconception that it was at once distorted so that it might fit into the established fiction, there can be no land beyond the pole. The Admiral cannot possibly be going where he clearly states he is going. Carefully note the remainder of the announcement, that area beyond the pole is the center of the great unknown. How could the Admiral have it reference to any mathematically established and then currently known area of the assumed globe, Earth as prescribed by the theory of 1543? It must be conceded that the land beyond to which Admiral Byrd referred had to be land beyond and out of bounds of theoretic Earth extent. Had it been considered part of the mathematized Earth, it would not have been referred to as center of the great unknown. Were it part of the recognized globe, Earth, it would be known, not unknown. To confirm the import of Admiral Byrd's announcement, one has only to examine the globe, which is symbolic of the Earth concept imposed in 1543. Try to find any area of land, water, or ice which encroaches upon the North Pole and which is not known. It will be seen that terrestrial areas extending toward the pole from the east, from the west, and from the south are now very well known and have been definitely established as terrestrial areas for many years. Is Spitsbergen or Siberia unknown? And do any such land areas extend north beyond the North Pole? They certainly do not. It will be observed, however, that there is no land area denoted as extending north from the North Pole point, or extending to the North Pole point from out of the north. How could any land be shown, despite its now proven reality, under the terms of theory prohibiting the land's existence? Hence the land mentioned by Admiral Byrd must lie due north from the North Pole. Therefore, it is within the conceptual absolute space that has been assumed to exist beyond given points north and south to sustain the globe Earth theory of 1543. If advanced moderns fear to relinquish the globe Earth fiction, visualization of the land's location may be had through the simple process of adding another terrestrial globe at the northern extremity, or exact North Pole point, of the presently conceived globe Earth. Give that added globe the same Earth diameter, or length, or give it twice or 100 times the terrestrial length. If it is provided the greater length, that will spare the tedious operation of adding more globes, 8,000 miles in extent. The added globe will of course extend into space. Where else could it extend? The created universe whole extends into space, where the universe was ordained. As it is necessary to have relative land space to build a house, it was necessary to have absolute space to build the universe. Such is that land's location. It is not the so-called other side of the earth. We know both sides. It is beyond the point north where the earth was assumed to end. It is endless in its extent toward and into celestial land areas under the luminous points observed, up, or out, from the known earth area of theory. In review of the magnificent naval accomplishment of February 1947, it is perceived that Admiral Byrd was not content merely to announce his desire to see that land beyond the pole, but he did in fact go beyond, where he acquired observational knowledge of the physical aspects of that land he had referred to as the center of the great unknown. Unlike the flight of fancy indulged in by the Boston Cardinal and the early Pilgrim of 1927, the Admiral and his airplane crew accomplished a physical flight of 7 hours duration in a northerly direction beyond the North Pole. Every mile and every minute of that journey beyond was over ice, water, or land that no explorer had seen. It is known that Raoul Amundsen, Humberto Noble, and other earlier explorers may have witnessed conditions at the exact North Pole point, but they definitely did not see and travel over the land, and mountains, and freshwater lakes extending beyond the pole and beyond the earth of theory. The Admiral's airplane pursued a course on the horizontal from the North Pole point to a point 1,700 miles beyond the earth. Then the course was retraced to the Arctic base. At no time did he shoot up or out from the earth level. As progress was made beyond the pole point, there was observed directly under the plane's course iceless land and lakes, and mountains where foliage was abundant. Moreover, a brief newspaper account of the flight held that a member of the Admiral's crew had observed a monstrous greenish-hued animal moving through the underbrush of that land beyond the pole. In view of the popular misconception that it is necessary to go through space in order to progress beyond the Earth, it seems fitting to emphasize that there was land or water directly under the Admiral's plane in his flight beyond the Earth. The land and the water were of the same consistency as land and water comprising this terrestrial area. There was nothing mysterious about the terrain. The atmospheric density provided oxygen content common to temperate zone areas of the known Earth. Above the airplane stretched the continuous sky. Beneath it reposed the land. What more could one have asked of that which for many centuries had been conjectured to be empty space? The magnitude of that memorable flight beyond the Earth, but always over realistic land and water, was never submitted for popular consumption. Press representatives were denied knowledge of it except during the brief period of active flight, when radio dispatches kept them informed. And insofar as personal knowledge extends, the Admiral, contrary to precedent, failed to render a book account of his most important flight and discovery. His flight held greater meaning than the combined journeys of men, which history records of men, and his most brilliant conquests. Need it be asked why such a historic journey beyond the Earth was never adequately described? Who, including the famous Admiral, was capable of describing the flight's import? Has science, as an organization, ever been known to attempt description of that which it does not comprehend? Could government officials have made plausible the actual existence and meaning of the unknown land extent beyond the North Pole point? Would the meaning even now be expressed, except for this present account? An incident conveys something of the flight sim part. Immediately after the flight account was heard in Washington, the Office of United States Naval Intelligence conducted a wide investigation of the author of the work, which had described such unknown land and the reason for its existence 20 years before it was discovered. Needless to say, the author did not need such investigative attention to attest the authenticity of his 1927 disclosures. He need not have lived to know of the memorable flight and confirming land discovery. He would still have departed this life with knowledge that the land of his premature disclosure did in fact exist. That 1947 discovery of land beyond the North Pole point and the interest expressed by a responsible government agency should bring into sharper focus the absurdity of conjectured spaceship accomplishments. There would have been no interest in the land beyond unless there was some discernment of that land's possibilities for journeying into the apparent up points of the universe about us. Modern discovery of inestimable land extent beyond the North Pole and South Pole points of theory attests to the complete lack of necessity for spaceships for modern journeys into the celestial areas of the universe. The idea of spaceships and their hope for accomplishment is based entirely upon an archaic theory now proved fallacious in the extreme as a result of newly discovered factual values described here. An outstanding factor for the defeat of spaceships accomplishment is the word of theory, gravitation. Gravitation is a word which has value only to the conjectures of theory. It has no relation whatever to cosmic reality. The cosmic force is magnetism, not gravitation. Yet a word of theory, which is opposed to cosmic reality, has been accredited as a cosmic feature in order to sustain a very factual spaceship. But as gravitation has value only within the framework of conjectured celestial mechanics, how can it possibly be utilized as a medium for accomplishment in a world of reality? Published accounts of hoped-for spaceship accomplishment fantastically hold that spaceship locomotion may be derived from non-existent power elements in the stratosphere. The elements are claimed to exist so as to sustain the conjecture of spaceship performance. We may even grant the existence of requisite power elements. Yet it becomes incompatible with reason to grant credence to astronomical assumption of fantastic distances and other illusory astronomical features, and at the same time to hope to journey to any celestial area by shooting up or out from the Earth's surface. There is no doubt whatever concerning the ability of mechanical engineers to construct a spaceship that could be elementary. But what then? Whether spaceship travel is embraced by reality or is nothing more than pure fiction, the developments of our time negate the necessity to attempt such journeys to areas of the universe about us. The land endlessly extending beyond the Earth's assumed northern end may be considered a celestial land continuous with a universe area called the Earth. The celestial joins with the terrestrial at the polar barriers that man erected. Though such man-made northern and southern barriers to the celestial have for many centuries proved most formidable, modern discovery shows that they possess no greater isolating value than the wire fence barriers erected to isolate a ranch area from its neighboring ranch throughout our western United States, or than the border between two nations. This present application to the discovered land beyond the North Pole revives the question that arose when land extent beyond the North Pole and the South Pole was first disclosed to various scientific and academic groups during lectures of 1927 to 30. The most popular questions of that time were, what are the connecting links composed of beyond the North Pole and South Pole? and is the material flexible that joins our Earth with celestial areas beyond the North Pole and the South Pole? Such questions correspond with inquiry concerning the consistency and flexibility of Atlantic Ocean and Pacific Ocean water. The oceans serve as connecting links between the eastern and western sides of this terrestrial area. They join the eastern, Old World, with the western, New World. The questions were not inspired only by the sensational nature of the disclosure that connecting land exists between the terrestrial and the celestial. They were impelled mostly through the inflexibility of concept developed from the fallacious, isolated globe, Earth and its illusory, circling in space. Naturally, the concept of Earth's isolation and its isolated movement through space precludes the possibility of anything but space beyond the assumed globe, Earth's northern and southern assumed ends. Concept has to harmonize with theory, and theory is to prescribe land's end at the mathematized geographic centers, the imaginary pole points. Such points must of mathematical and conceptual necessity designate the modern northern and southern dropping-off points. They are equivalent to the eastern and western horizontal Earth ends considered to be dropping-off points prior to the discovery of this New World. That earlier concept created fear that ships sailing to the eastern and western horizon points would fall over the Earth's edge and be forever lost in space, whereas the superseding concept created fear of being lost in space beyond the illusory northern and southern ends of the Earth. Such is the power of concept. Review of Facts discloses that the concept developed by the astronomer Ptolemy is based in the illusory, and that this vast western so-called hemisphere exists where space was conjectured. The course of journey from the eastern half of the terrestrial width to the western half never necessitates shooting up or down. From one side to the other side is on a direct line. But the globe symbol fosters the illusion that one side is under the other. Up and down are always relative on a terrestrial plane. Likewise, are up and down relative in the universe whole. Hence the undeniable facts of modern enterprise attest to the similarity of yesteryear's conceptual error with that of our time. Yesteryear's illusions are repeated, but they have been applied to different areas. The memorable discovery of land beyond the South Pole, on December 12, 1928, and the subsequent discovery of land extending beyond the North Pole, in February 1947, confirm that the previously assumed Earth ends continue into celestial land areas appearing up or out from terrestrial level. Because of the structure of the universe whole, wherein the terrestrial is actually three obscured words area rather than as an isolated unit, no shooting up or out from terrestrial level is required for immediate and unfailing journey into areas of the celestial. The northern and southern land courses into the universe about us, to Mars, Saturn, named area of the celestial, are now clearly defined. They can be traveled over as readily in this modern era of airplane speed and simple radio communication as an ocean steamer can move down from one side of the misconceived globe, Earth, or up from the other side. The up and down perspectives have no factual value in an ocean steamer's movement or an airplane's flight from one side of the Earth to the other side. The globular concept fraudulently attires such perspective with reality. In an attempt to view the universe and to determine journeys to its celestial areas, the relation of the terrestrial to the celestial is likewise provided with false up and down isolation because the celestial appears to be up from the terrestrial. Hence the seeming, the apparent, the deceptive condition becomes endowed with realism in plans for journeys to celestial areas. Though the error of concept may be understood and excused, it can in no way be modified unless the concept is discarded. Conceptual growth is ever dependent on the nourishing irrigation of change. The following comparison is provided as a timely era and conducive to such change.